everybody. It's lovely to see you again, and welcome back after the summer. We have to make the most of the odd day that turns up like this at this time of the year, but it is good. Look, I just want to get straight to it. A few years ago, I read this incredible book, Goddesses Never Age. You can see it's like a Bible there for me. And one of the things that I came across in it, this it just blew my mind. Apart from anything else, the incredibly refreshing, optimistic, positive, beautiful message that came through on that. It was a breath of fresh air. One of the things that I read in it, or that you talk about, is that in societies where women are sort of elevated in status when they reach their menopause years or post menopause, that they don't suffer menopause in the same way as the rest of us might, or those of us in Western culture, because they don't actually fear growing older. And I was fascinated about this because then I wondered, is it just the fear of what's on the other side of menopause? Or is it that, what actually is it? And so that's why we set up the Tuesday Night Club for Wise and Ageless Goddesses, thanks to you and your fabulous book. And we've just gone on from them. We've had wonderful people come and talk to us, people bringing their sort of optimistic knowledge, skill, advice, and just pure magic in some occasions. But now we've got you, and so I'm so grateful to you for coming and speaking with us this evening.
Well, what a pleasure, because it is women like us who change the world. And you don't need to be because you're a role model. At this age, we're a role model for so many people that we can really change the trajectory of their lives. So let me give you an example. I was recently visiting my home. My brother last year attempted to die of lung cancer. And I said, no, we're not going to do that. And I knew what it was about. It had to do with grief and resentment, because all dis-ease is biosymbolic. And so I drove there and I said, okay, here's what you're going to do. And you're going to bring in your three children who are fighting with each other. And I'm going to talk to one of them and say, you're going to have to forgive your brother, which means you're going to have to be like Jesus, because what he did was unforgivable. But you do not want to mess up all these generations going forward, because your children play with each other. And, it's just one of those things where, okay, so I wrote this book in 2000, I think it was 18, Dodging Energy Vampires.
Mm.
Every single one of you has one of these people in your family. It's about 1 in 5 people who has a personality disorder, and they don't act right. And no matter what you do, you can't do right by them.
Mhm.
Every family has one. And once you can identify them, they're the ones who will wreck every Christmas, every whatever. And you can't, they're sicker than we are smart. They say things that you can't believe. Well, in this case, it was my brother's first wife, the mother of her children. So when she dropped dead suddenly, there was a lot of the children began to fight with each other over stuff. And my brother was so angry with them. He was so angry. And he said, and I quote, that bitch is wrecking the family from beyond the grave. Now, that happens, but we have the power to change that and not let that happen. Anyway, so I just got back from a trip where the remaining siblings, all 4 of us, were celebrating his complete recovery from something that only had a 2% chance of recovery. So what I want you all to know, we have power within us that is far greater than you can ever imagine, but it has to do with connecting with the part of us that is made in the image of God. When I wrote Goddesses Never Age, over here in the US, we got this cover, but when I wrote it, this is the honest to God truth. I had written The Wisdom of Menopause, so I understood what that was about and all that. But a part of me was, okay, I am not going to believe the myth that my life is over and that every man wants a woman who's 20 years younger. And I also wasn't going to believe the myth that there are no good men. I'm a Libra, so it was really important for me to be partnered. But your first thing you have to partner with is your soul, as with yourself.
Mhm.
So I got really good at liking my own company, but I also learned Argentine tango and went to Buenos Aires and danced. And I put myself out there in ways that were extremely uncomfortable.
Mhm.
Now, I just drove 10 hours to my hometown and drove back. And, I used to not want to go anywhere alone. I mean, I just, most of us don't want to go alone, but
That's
now I'm good at it. And so, so what I want, and I just started, okay, for everybody, I just started online dating. And I want you to know, I didn't, now this is funny. I didn't know how old I was. I didn't, because after I wrote that book, and you laugh, but it's true. I had to take my birth year and 2024 and subtract. And then I said, oh my God, this can't be the truth. So I don't do milestone birthdays and I don't do any of that. And I was recently talking with my buddy, Mario Martinez, Dr. Mario Martinez, who started the biocognitive thing. You should have him on the show. He is wonderful. He
yes.
puts out the fastest growing demographic in the world right now is healthy centenarians, healthy people over the age of 100.
Wow.
Wow,
That's
right? And he
so
said
optimistic. Yes.
they all have the same thing in common, and it's called Centenarian Consciousness. So what is that? They're future oriented. So, your garden is beautiful. And they go, wait till you see it in 3 years. They don't spend any time talking about their illnesses. Now, you're going to notice, all of you, a lot of your friends do. Their whole social life is what I call the organ recital. What's wrong with my kidneys? What's wrong? What I do around any of that is, and I want you all to adopt this, the phrase is, that doesn't apply to me. Okay, so now that I'm this age, whatever, people then begin to cone down and they limit themselves. Now, where we are right now, we are in the 4 years post this COVID Olympics, I call it, and we've all been in the crucible, finding out who our friends were, finding out who's driven by fear, who's
Mhm.
driven by faith. I mean, I couldn't believe, I knew the guy who installed the snitch line at our governor's office in Augusta, Maine, using funds that were not for that purpose. I was just again with my family. There's a ski area there, and they had people during COVID that would go and look at the lift line to see if there were more than 6 people and if they were standing apart. I mean, they're skiing, they're in a lift line, they're outdoors. So, all that to say,
Mhm.
we've learned where people's consciousness was. And it's possible that your consciousness was there at the beginning, March of 2020. And then as the time has gone on, you've awakened a bit and said, huh, I don't think that made any sense. That we're waking up to how we've been controlled. Now, right this very moment, as we're speaking, Pluto is in the final degree of Capricorn. It's 29 degrees, and that's called the anorectic degree. What it's asking all of us is this: what have you learned during the past 20 years about top-down structures and your own sovereignty, your own joy, your own freedom? Because now is the time that you're going to want to cut the chains that have bound you. Now, I'm good friends with one of your Irish rogues, Mark Atwood. And Mark is very, very funny. And he's got a healing center with hyperbaric oxygen and all of that. And we laugh a lot. So here's the thing. When you laugh at things that are ridiculous, you're flooding your body with what's called nitric oxide, which is the uber neurotransmitter that balances serotonin and all of the rest of them. And so you literally become younger and younger and younger. And I wrote a little book called The Secret Pleasures of Menopause way back. And it was just all about this nitric oxide and the fact that it's increased during meditation, during exercise, eating green leafy vegetables, during orgasm. In fact, when an egg is fertilized, there's a big burst of nitric oxide that comes out as light. And when you die, as you're dying, this DMT in your brain also puts out a big thing of nitric oxide. So it's the molecule of life. And so the more you focus on what is life giving, like this wonderful future that has been foretold for humanity, that's just right around the corner. We're seeing all these old top-down structures crumbling. I just watched a little video of some guy in the FBI, the three-letter agency, show up at his house to censor his speech. I guess he put up a meme they didn't like, whatever. And he just said, listen, nothing you're doing is legal. Everything you're doing is against the law. And so I'm going to be, please stop recording, sir. No, I won't be stopping now. And I'll be posting this as soon as you leave. So get back in your car. That's what we've learned. We've learned to stand up for ourselves. And that's so key in the world that is coming, because we were told all this stuff that wasn't true. I was the only one who would walk through O'Hare International Airport in Chicago during COVID without a mask on, and I'd hear them telling lies on the loudspeaker. It's the law. No, it isn't. No, it wasn't. And I would be the only one. Now, most of you don't want to be the first one. You're not built for that. You weren't born for that. I have my North Node in Aries in the 10th house. I was born for that. I am the figurehead on the prow of the icebreaker. It's just what I came to do. So with Centenarian Consciousness, you do things like that doesn't apply to me. I'll give you another example. When I go into a gym, like at a hotel or whatever, you have to put your age in the machine, whether it's a treadmill, whether it's a elliptical
Oh, yeah.
trainer, whatever. Okay, I've been putting in 40 for a long time,
Lovely.
a long time. And I'll tell you why. The machines are calibrated for what we call planned decrepitude. They're calibrated so that, if I put in 80, the thing wouldn't, it wouldn't even speed up. So you don't, when I finally did the thing, on the dating site, I thought, well, that's the end of that. There's nobody's going to be interested. That was not true either. So I've now proved something else to myself.
And
There
I'm not a bit
are,
surprised.
there's a lot of good men out there and they like me. Okay, so
Absolutely. Not a bit surprised. And you talk though, what you're explaining though, first of all, in Ireland, I think many of us here who went to, religious schools and had
yeah.
nuns or priests teaching us, we've watched it. Our generation, those of us here with you today, is the generation who watched all of that just fall away and the power being taken back into the hands of the people, and serious investigation and work has been done in getting that out into the open. And so perhaps something new and stronger will be built, but we've kind of been, the first generation who's lived with that in a sense. So I do know what you're talking about. And also, though, you do say that fear is the one thing that is designed to keep people small, insecure, dependent, and all of those other things. And yet it's the thing that actually causes most illness, most despair, most depression, most decay. And you talk in your books, I know in Making Life Easy, you talk about our thoughts, the quality of our thoughts shape the quality of our life, and how we have to really look at them and see, are they fear-based and low vibe, or are they a lot more positive and better to enhance the health of our entire being?
No, that's exactly right. And so we have a choice every day to be healthy or be sick. Now, Louise Hay, who was my friend and started Hay House Publishing, Louise started her whole career with just something so simple: mirror work, looking in the mirror and saying, I love you. I really love you. Now, that can be too much for someone who's
Mm.
had a lot of abuse. So then in that case, you go with, I accept myself unconditionally right now. So you maybe do that one for 10 days, then move into, the postdoctoral level of, I love you. Now, I never realized the upbringing of the average Irish Catholic until I was down in a hospital in Boston, and I was telling my colleagues about a discovery I'd made with one of the men in the hospital bed. And I was very happy to have found that. And one of the Irish Catholic nurses says to me, don't break your arm patting yourself on the back. I realized that there's a thing in Ireland where you make sure that nobody gets to a place where they're proud of themselves. That is not okay.
It's a
Not
sign of affection, funnily enough.
yeah,
And,
but it is. And the good part of it is that you don't get a big head. But the
yes.
truth is, okay, I want to tell you something funny about um, this book. Okay, so when I first came out with it, and I was talking about people who are born as empaths, they feel the feelings of others, they want to help, they're very much positive people. And then there are the narcissists who are just think they're the best thing ever born. Now, here's what happens. Whenever I've taught about that subject, you get the empaths are so worried that they are a narcissist. They're so worried. Okay. That's how I know they're an empath. They That's how they know. They're worried. Every narcissist I've ever met is certain that they're an empath. They're
Ah,
certain of it.
isn't that is gas because I know I've you read about narcissism and you hear that it's a lot more prevalent than than you would imagine, and reading down through it, and everybody I suppose can identify with something,
Of course.
something.
Of
But
course.
you're absolutely right. We're more concerned about appearing to be, a vampire, an energy vampire,
Yeah.
and
And it's not possible. An empath couldn't do it if you tried. You can't do it. You can't even, um, if there's a sort of a half-dead mouse that your cat leaves on your doorstep, you
yeah.
feel terrible about that. When you go to a public bathroom, you clean it up before you leave. I mean, you can't help yourself. That's how we are.
And you cry when you read about animals and good news stories and hope and things. Have you, I mean, it's a very important area, and I think we're becoming more and more aware of it. Certainly now that sort of, I think years ago, and a lot of the ladies here might identify with this, that, you had the thing where uh, people would turn up at mass absolutely beautifully dressed, wonderfully turned out, but you'd no idea what had been going on, what kind of, torment or abuse that might have been meted out the night before in order to have that perfect family sitting there. Now, I'm going back a bit, but tell me now that things are, again, as you say, becoming more transparent, and it needs to be even more. We need to be talking about this and allowing people admit to themselves that what is going on in their life is abusive or a drain energetically in their life. What are the ways of what are the physical manifestations of having that kind of energy around you?
What I was most aware of, the first thing is that these sort of mystery diseases, Lyme disease, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, panic attacks, all of these things that no doctor had anything effective for offering, very, very often the woman would, especially my patient, I'd clean up her diet and she'd start to exercise and meditate and do all the right things, and it would work for a month, maybe two, but she could never sustain it. And the reason is, as long as her life force is being drained constantly by this one individual, she could never quite get enough reserve, like reserve in the body, to heal. As soon as she could name the behavior and name the person, and then institute some ways to protect herself, and I'll tell you what those are. One is gray rock. Okay, so if you're in a business and someone is constantly coming in to bother you, you just pretend you're a gray rock, like there's nothing going on here, or just you're literally you have nothing to offer them. But what we do as empaths, it's the weirdest thing. We feel as though we have to heal them, and you can't
Mm.
because they have an abyss inside. It's a bottomless pit. Think about celebrities. Think about celebrities. I mean, there's not enough money. I mean, P. Diddy just got arrested today, that guy. And, there's not enough money and fame and all of that um, to heal that abyss inside. So our job is understanding that we have to protect ourselves, maybe put up a bubble. Another one is you just pretend that there are mirrors all over your body. I used to do this in New York City. So there are mirrors outward so that you're invisible, just invisible. And anything like that, or you tell the narcissist something that they ask you, okay, we all need to learn this one. We all need to learn this one. Someone asks you, could you come by Saturday? I'm moving and I need help with moving. And you've got something else scheduled that day. You have an outing, you have a lunch with friends, you got something you're very interested in doing. But this person calls, oh God, I've called everyone else. There's no one else to help me. You, in that very moment, you need to say, I'll get back to you.
Mm.
Here's what we all do, the empaths. We go, oh, yeah, of course, of course. What I had planned doesn't really matter.
Mm.
But if you keep doing that, my colleague Bernie Siegel, who wrote Love, Medicine, and Miracles back in the day, Bernie used to ask the audience, how many of you want to live until 100 or over? And very few would do it because they equated being 100 with being decrepit and being taken care, and that doesn't need to be the case. And so what he would say is, and he'd posit this question to the audience, you have this beautiful thing planned, and then your friend wants you to help them move. How many of you would say, I'm so sorry, I've got other plans? Very few would say, oh, no, I'm going to stand up for myself. And the ones who did, who said, I'm going to stand up for myself, he'd say, you're the ones who are going to live till you're 100.
That's amazing. What about people who can't actually, if they're married to them, or they're their children, or they're their parents, or whatever? How do they protect themselves or move forward?
What they need to do is just know what they're dealing with.
Ah.
And then, okay, so let's say that it is your mother and she doesn't live with you, but
Mm.
it's your mother. Okay. Mario Martinez taught me this. It's called milligrams of love. You go and you decide what kind of visit works, like visiting an art museum, going to lunch, taking a walk, and you time how long it takes for them to start criticizing you.
Yeah.
Well, when did you get your hair done like that? You've gained weight, haven't you? Anything like that. So let's say that you got about 15 minutes before the criticisms start. So you got 15 minutes. That's the number of milligrams of love that that person can stand, because true love is toxic to a toxic person. So
Uh-huh.
what you do then, you try this a couple times till you know how long you've got. It's maybe only 30 minutes. And then you say, you know what? The phone just rang and there's something else I have to do. So you take your leave. You're protecting yourself right then. Or, as another friend of mine said, the best thing you can do, and this was the woman who wrote Women Who Love Psychopaths, Sandra Brown. She said to some family members, send cards. Just send cards. Don't ever be around. Just send a card. And what's so interesting with the true narcissist, they will pretend that everything is okay because they don't want to ever lose face. And here's the other thing. Let's say you're married to one and you've kind of had it. You've come to the end of your rope. I have a good friend like this. She had a husband from Texas, and I would say, yeah, he's all hat and no cattle. He talked a good game, but he just nothing going on. And finally, when she knew it was time to divorce him, I said to her, how are you going to feel when he has another woman within 15 minutes? Because you got to get ready for that, because that's what happens. This guy went from an unemployed, overweight, whatever, within like 3 months, 6 months, he had a Texas oil heiress. So now he's flying all over the world for ski vacations. And she had to come to grips with the fact that her son, their son, is always going to want to be with dad for the fancy stuff. And she said, but this is where it gets biblical. What profiteth a man to gain the world but lose his soul? And so she's thriving at this point. And then, recently she's seen the other woman, who thought she had the big prize. She's
Mhm.
gained weight. She's got high blood pressure. Here's the thing. You always think, because I did when I was married to one of these guys who got married 15 minutes later. You always think, oh God, this other woman is going to bring out the best in him. This now she's going to see. Here's our deadly thing. We fall in love with their potential, not what's going on,
Mhm.
but with their, you can see who they are, who that soul is. It's such a beautiful quality. And as a doctor, I could see people well, but it nearly killed me in my marriage. And by the way, that's what perimenopause is about. That's what this whole thing is about, is that you can no longer hang on to these things that are killing you. And all the suffering of perimenopause is to bring that to your attention. And it's the last thing. Here's what I say. If you could see it clearly, it wouldn't go into your body. I had a fibroid that big, as big as my husband's head. And, now
Saying
he's,
that.
you know, um, so when you, and so that's how you want to live your life. You want to take 100% responsibility for everything, meaning you're not to blame, but you're
Yes.
responsible for it. You're okay. This is the situation I'm in. There's a part of me, my soul, karma, I don't know, that got me here. And I have the inner ability to live heaven on earth. And this isn't going to come with me, this thing over here. So, but you have to grieve. I mean, after I went through my divorce way back, and by the way, I mean, God has a sense of humor. The last day of my marriage was the first Oprah appearance. Like, and that,
Right.
this blessing, right, of being on Oprah with Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom,
Yes.
what it did, that light, that blessing, it not only shone on me, but it also is like you turn on the kitchen light and you got cockroaches in your kitchen. So it's going to show you
Yeah.
what
All
to
the
avoid,
other stuff too. All the
all
other
the
stuff.
other stuff too. And but the main message, we have the power
Mhm.
to change our lives for the better. That doesn't mean that we won't go through grieving, that we won't suffering. Um, being suffering is inevitable. Misery is optional.
Uh-huh.
Misery. And those people who I was just talking with a grief counselor yesterday, and he said there are people who can get reversed where they're absolutely addicted to the grieving process. It's like 20 years later
Yes.
and they're still grieving. I had a friend, my daughter did a little in-house concert with singing and so on. And a woman who had been there had lost her husband the year before. Okay, so a psychic friend of mine is leaving the house. And she said, who's John? I said, oh, John is the husband of, Susie over here. And she said, well, John was here the whole evening trying to get Susie's attention to let her know he's fine on the other side, everything's good. I tell Susie about it thinking, oh, this would be so comforting. It wasn't. She's just stuck
Aha.
in a place where she's visiting her husband's grave all the time. I can tell it's been now 4 years. She would like to consider another, but she's always got a million excuses why that's not going to work. And when someone's there,
Mhm.
the best thing we can do is offer them a rope for the hole they're down in. But if they're trying to pull you down into that hole,
Mhm.
don't go, because you then become a problem. And that's what women do a lot. And I noticed this when I was learning Argentine tango. Okay, you go in, and I'm on, there's a big window and it's Portland ballroom dance, and people are walking by, and I'm noticing there aren't enough men. There are a lot of women who want to learn to dance. There aren't enough men.
Mhm.
And I thought, okay. And then what the women would do, they'd sit around and criticize the men who would not ask them to dance. Like, well, look at what they're doing. And I just came to grips with the fact that if a woman was 21 years old, it didn't matter whether or not she could dance. She was a 21-year-old woman. The men were going to go for her. That's biology. I'm
Mhm.
not going to fight that. What I did was just decide that I was going to have fun. And so, I created this whole tango community, and we had potlucks, and I made a dance floor in my house. And we eventually had this wonderful community. And then the other thing I would do, though, I'd be out there on the street. If the guy looked pretty good, I would- I'd go out there and say, hey, if you as a man learn how to dance, you'll be a god. So come on
Yes.
in and we'll teach you how to be a god.
I'm hoping that whoever you meet through your dating site now has plenty of tango feet about him, because that would be really good, wouldn't it? But that's
Yeah.
something you talk about. You created a community, and you
Yeah.
actually do say that regardless from time to time and how healthy or how much exercise we take or how well we live, that in actual fact it's feeling valued, appreciated, part of a community that is very much a part of living well and the quality of life.
Absolutely. So during COVID on December 29th, 2020, I had 20 people in my home,
Huh.
because I knew that we are a herd species. We need each other.
Uh-huh.
And our governor said, only 6 people and social distancing. And I just happen to know there was no science behind that one. So I had a whole bunch of people come in that I knew were not fearful. And I said, okay, we're hiding Jews here and we're the Jews. I don't know what we're going to do, but the truth is we had people coming in who just started to cry. They hadn't hugged anyone for 6 months. And we saved a lot of lives. We'd keep people out of the hospital, and we'd bring them, wormwood and all kinds of stuff. And it created incredible community that's still there to
Yes.
this day. Yeah, and I know that that happened for you in Ireland as well.
It did, and the interesting thing is we talked about it earlier, that fear is the least sort of way, or the worst way of trying to support yourself, and yet there was so much of that. And I think from certainly our point in Ireland, the whole idea in Ireland is, when somebody is leaving, they get a good send off. I mean, every elderly person as they
Yeah,
leave this world deserves a good send off. They expect it. They've fed into all of the others. They've been at all the other wakes, and so many beautiful souls left this world without so much as their family members, or even just their immediate family members. And I still remember it, even looking at the Queen of England, when her husband, a very old lady, sitting on her own. I couldn't understand why there hadn't been a bubble around her, at the very least, people who had lived with her, who were not exposed, who could be with her. But we had no answers. We just did what we were told. And in a
that's
sense,
right. Well,
yeah,
then what it did, it brought up the one thing that good humans can't really wrap their head around, and that is there is evil on planet Earth. There are evil forces. Most people are really good and wonderful, and there's a few. Now, we talked about narcissists. That's like, yeah, you can live with them. But a psychopath is about 1 in 100 people,
right.
and they're the ones who ran that agenda. And good people went along with it, you see. So now those of us here, you've all come in here to listen to me, so you're of a different breed, and you're stronger than you were in 2020.
Mm.
Chances are very good. You know more, you're stronger. You might have had, we had in the United States the biggest baptism in the history of the United States out at Pirates Cove. That movie went around, the Jesus Revolution.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be baptized or become Christian, but we do know that this has been a spiritual awakening.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, members here, ladies who are with us this evening, and other members in the Wise and Ageless Goddess community, they used that time to develop new skills or make new discoveries about themselves because they learned so much. They had an opportunity to learn so much, and so many things changed for people in the best possible way. We have
Yes.
people here who are end of life medics and doctors
Yeah.
and nurses who retrained and are working in holistic wellness, with alternative practices. Other people who are scientists, we have a radiographer who is a bioenergy healer. We have so many people moved in a way that allowed them bring more of themselves to the world, and in that sense they've used it in that way. They didn't necessarily buy into the fear, but they certainly found an opportunity to open up something more for themselves. And I do want to ask you about something, because I love, one of my favorite books of all time is Making Life Easy. And the reason why I love it is you are a OBGYN, you are an author, you're several times on Oprah Winfrey's show. People come to you and they want to hear about what you have to say, as we do here. And one of the things that delights me about you is the number of practices that you have, which are slightly wooey, you know. You,
They're very wooey.
yeah, and exactly, and yet you joyous. I mean, for example, one of the things you say in your book is that it was while you were doing dream work with somebody
Oh,
Cohen.
Doris Cohen, Doris E. Cohen. Yes, I just love Doris. I worked with her for 7 years. Yeah, and I don't know where Doris is at the moment. I do know during COVID, her family in Dallas wouldn't see her. The fear again,
Yeah.
like.
Okay.
But the work with her was extraordinary, beginning to realize that your dreams teach you things. And if you ever have a bad dream, now this is important, she taught me this. If you ever have a bad dream and you wake up, oh, something awful is going to happen, she'd have you go back into the dream and
Ah,
change the ending and just change it. We have that kind of power. So if I have a really bad dream, it's like, okay, we're not doing that. You go back into the dream, because she said dreams come from the same place, whether you are imagining it or dreaming it. Like,
okay.
I'm going to give you an example. So 2020 starts, and I had some dreams about Donald Trump. I kid you not. Now, I didn't know about him one way or another. Here's one dream. It woke me up. It's 5 a.m. I was stunned. I had to take a bath. Just, I had to get in water somehow. And
Uh,
here's the dream. I was part of his entourage, and I would go into the medical tent when every 30 minutes they would do his vital signs, EKG, blood pressure, all of that. And as I was doing that, he would talk to me about all of my work, and he was very complimentary. I wake up from the dream knowing this man is not who we've been told he is. There's something about him that you don't know, despite all of the incredible hatred, and now the second assassination attempt, and all the rest of it. That awakened me in a way that the news never would, because
okay.
it was so real, and many other people had that same experience. But I up to that point, I wasn't political. I've always been an independent. I don't care what they do. I don't trust any of them. Um, you know,
Well,
but I did learn our rights come to us from God. They don't come to us from the government. They come from God.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And as you say, when you're talking about your dreams as well, though, very often we embody what we're feeling. We walk around for 24 hours afterwards, kind of feeling, I've really experienced that. I've lived that. There's this, and I mean, I've experienced actually dreaming of something that I couldn't possibly have known. My husband lost his ring on one occasion, and I went to sleep saying, I will waken in the morning knowing where that ring is.
I
And
love this. Yes.
and
Yeah.
and he came to me in the morning, and I was cleaning my teeth or whatever. And he said, so I suppose you can find my ring today. And I said, it's between two plant pots. It just, the image of it was still there in my head. And he went off out into the shed where about 3 months earlier he'd been potting up things, took all the plant pots apart, the little ones, he stacked them all up, and the ring was in the middle of it. And I
Love it.
couldn't possibly have known that. So, I mean, that must be, as you say, isn't it? This sort of collective unconscious. We plug into that, don't we? And we know so much more than we believe we do. It's available to us in a sense.
Yeah, and we've been talked out of it. So way
Yeah,
back in the day, I read all the books of a author from the 30s named Joan Grant. Maybe she was 30s, 40s, 50s.
yeah,
As a little girl in England, she would wake up in the morning and she would tell her parents about all the soldiers that she had helped make their transition from the battlefield. And she would remember their names and their regimens and she'd explain the whole thing. What her parents did is they began to hide all the newspapers from her because they were certain that somehow she was picking it up. But then they would go and they would look at the casualty lists, and she'd been absolutely right. And her soul at night
yeah.
was doing this work, this spiritual work to help people make their transition.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, and
You
there's a
know,
lot of that. So
so
yeah, I'm very, very woo, because if you don't get into the woo, you miss a whole lot of the fun.
yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's the whole idea of this sort of, there are magical elements to every day. I think you talk about grounding, standing in the earth with, really plugging into nature in that sense as well, walking in nature, meditation, proprioceptive writing. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes,
That's
you
an
are.
interesting one, isn't it?
That was life-changing. Again, I did that for 7 years because I'd been so educated in the Western system that I didn't know what I thought. I'm serious. I did not know what I liked. I didn't know what I thought. I was always responding to what the professor wanted.
Yes.
So, with proprioceptive writing, and you can all do this, it's life-changing. You light a candle. Now, at the time I learned, you had cassette tapes. So you'd put one side of a tape of Baroque music,
Mhm.
like Mozart, Haydn, anything like that. The Adagio movement, which is 60 cycles per second. So you light the candle, you start the music, and you've got typing paper, plain paper in front of you, and a pen. You take a breath and you come up writing. And then you just begin to write whatever you hear. And I hear it here, whatever you hear. So you're the secretary writing down your thoughts. And then when a thought has a particular buzz, you ask what's called the proprioceptive question. And that is, what do I mean by? And so for me, the word that went on for 2 years was worthy, because women have not been worthy for thousands of years. That which is feminine has been seen as that which is inferior to masculinity. So to so we had the women's movement and we had all that stuff that needed to happen, but it all overshot. So, then we became, well, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, like all that Gloria Steinem
That's
stuff. And so if you love women, you have to hate men. That thing. So now
yes.
the birth rate is like plummeting.
Mhm.
You know, we don't even have replacement rate fertility because people bought they bought the notion that you could do anything a man could do, and then you'd find out that, wow, at the end of the day, you're 42, 43, and you forgot to
Yeah.
get married and have children. Now, I don't think everyone needs to get married and have children, but I do know that for most of us women, nurturing something is really important. It's in our bodies. These
Mm,
bodies, whether you have a child or not, are
mm,
built for nurturing. It could be a book, it could be a garden, it can be a family, it could be anything. And we have to do it to feel absolutely fulfilled,
mm.
generally speaking. And then, we've had the little trans agenda come on into there, and what a
A whole
disaster
lot
that.
of things. Yeah, and but as you say there, as we reach the I think it's Julia Cameron who wrote The Artist's Way. She says that as we, maybe you may have said it, and I hope I'm not misrepresenting you there. That as we reach the end of our reproductive fertility, we move into a very powerful creative fertility. That this is actually when that kind of almost godlike gift that we have, we're born with, that soul gift that we come into this world with, gets a chance to claim our attention. And very often that's really what begins to call to women, I think, when they've come through menopause, their identity very often as either perhaps as they've nurtured a family or a career or a community or a book, as you say, that you come to the end of that identity and you move into another, with and it's, to my mind, I think it brings so many women here in this group have actually done that. They've opened up and received that gift that they always knew they had. They've remembered it in some way and found a way to bring it into the world. um, do you have another book, another project,
I do.
what's coming next?
I am writing a book called Made in the Image of God,
Ah,
the promise of that. Because one of the things that I learned during the whole COVID thing
yeah.
is I had people come up to me in the Midwest, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, places that I had never been. The parts of the country they make fun of on Saturday Night Live. And I would have people come up to me and pray with me. And it moved me so much that I actually started to read the Bible, knowing full well, everybody,
Mhm.
that, you know, 400 books have been left out of it, or 700, all called the Apocrypha, the Book of Mary. And I know all that.
Mhm.
But but then when I read especially Ephesians, we battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities of darkness that are not of this world. And our job is not to fight them. Our job is to expose them. And as I watched all of these Christians, though, like Billy Graham's son, Billy Graham, very famous Christian, and his son Franklin Graham took massive amounts of money and made the churches into vaccination centers and all of that. And I started to go to a church where they said, okay, because even today, right, me, Miss, tarot reader, crystal astrology person, when I say, well, at church, well, the pastor said, your whole job here isn't about this. It's about to get a relationship with Jesus. Just sit down and have a relationship with Jesus. Like, I could do that. So I, began to see the wisdom in the Bible, the King James version, even though I know all the other stuff, begin to see that this is all over the Bible. You
Uh-huh.
have been made in the image of God. What does that mean? It means that God didn't mess up when it came to an immune system. So I am looking at all the ways in which the dark one has convinced humans that we're not made in the image of God,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
how to make that your reality. What is the promise? Like way back in the day, I learned to meditate, transcendental meditation, directly from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the 70s. And so he said to me, if you meditate twice a day for 20 minutes for 7 years, you will be in cosmic consciousness. Being the person that I am, born in the year of the ox, I did it. And at the seventh year, I was not in cosmic consciousness. I was wearing a beeper and running down the hall,
Mm.
delivering babies and all the rest of it, knowing that getting in that deep meditative state and having the beeper go off was so jarring. I said, oh, this is not going to work. So there's always this promise, whether it's Buddhist, Hindu, go around the mala beads, do the rosary, whatever. If you do this, you will somehow reach some kind of an enlightened state.
Yes, yeah.
And the truth is, you're already there. All you have to do is, like I do, oh, that doesn't apply to me.
Mhm. 100%. I mean, we're born perfect. We're
That's
born.
it.
And
But
you actually, in a beautiful, I'm sorry for jumping in there, you in a wonderful seminar conference with Dr. Wayne Dyer and Inside Out Wellness. By the way,
yes, we
everybody,
had a
that
ball.
is, oh my gosh, that is pure gold. That is available on, if you have the Hay House app, at best $4.99 you can possibly spend a month. That is available on that. In that, you're both talking, and you talk about the fact that our source is in wellness. That all we have to do is own that, in a sense, in order to follow the sort of the spirit of wellness, and I imagine all that goes with it, all of the extra supports and scaffolding or whatever else we want to do in order to be well. I mean, you mention all of those things, but that is absolutely fascinating. Our source is in wellness, and how could
That's
we be
right.
more powerful
I,
in that?
I'm working with an osteopath now, and she had a terrible break in her ankle and did everything, everything. And she said, I finally realized what I was going to have to do was just use, so there's two places in the body that heal, the heart and the hands. And the hands are extensions of the heart segment of the embryo. So your hands are really extensions of your heart. So she said every day I would just put my hands on my ankle and I would love it. And that's what healed it.
Wow.
Ultimately, that's what healed it. Yeah.
Ah, thank you. Now, look, I know we've listened to you so much, and I could listen to you all evening. Does anybody? I don't want to let anybody leave without the opportunity to ask a question of Dr. Christiane, if you want to. You've all read all the books. You've listened to all the wonderful podcasts, and oh, actually, can we say that Ruth? You have you want to speak? Hi,
Yeah.
Ruth. This is
Hi.
Ruth.
I just wanted to know what is the best thing we can do for ourselves that will be spiritually uplifting.
Okay. Every morning when you get up, okay, do not look at your cell phone the first thing. So just don't do that. Every morning, spend, first of all, lie in bed for a moment to see if you can pick up on fragments of a dream, and then write that down, because the most incredible point of focus is when you're writing, which is why all children should learn cursive. I don't know what they're doing in Ireland, but nobody can do cursive anymore. So write that down and give it a name, like what the dream was. Give it a title, like it's a headline of a newspaper. Like my Trump dream might have been, doctor discovers Trump is not who they say he is, like that. And that'll bring the essence of the whole dream back. Then spend the first 30 minutes of the day reading something inspiring to you. That could be the Bible. It could be Catherine Ponder's work. It could be something from Louise Hay or Wayne Dyer. Just something that starts your day, because the way you start it pre-paves the day for the rest of the day. Then when you go to bed at night, you're going to digest your day. And that's when you write down at least 5 things you're grateful for. Now, that seems so prosaic, but that which we pay attention to expands. And you will find that those 2 little practices begin a vortex that draws more and more goodness to you.
Lovely.
So,
Thank you.
all right,
That's lovely.
great.
Thank you, Ruth, for that. And I just want to say, Tori says that she dreamed of 5 random numbers. Maybe I need to do the lottery. Well, you definitely do. You've nothing to lose. There's a lovely joke, that somebody says, "But God, you promised me a lotto win," and God goes, "Yes, but buy a lotto ticket. I'm trying to let you win. You have to buy
Right.
a."
So look up the
Lorraine.
gematria of those numbers. Look up the gematria, because they all mean something. Yeah.
Okay, Tori, that's something to do, and come back and let us know how you get on, and come back and share your good fortune. Lorraine has said, "Christiane, what an absolute pleasure to listen to somebody who's not afraid to speak out. I am one of those worried at times, who's worried at times about whether or not I'm a narcissist. You have given me great comfort. And for that, I'm really grateful. Oh, Lorraine, that's so good of you to say that. Thank you so much. Tori said, thank you. Mercedes said, terrific talk. Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was very helpful. So can I ask you, just do you have a deck of your oracle cards there at all handy by any chance?
Well, I got my little, this is my little travel tarot. Don't leave home without it.
Love the idea. So can I ask you before we close, and our time is actually almost up, and thank you everybody who's here this evening. I really appreciate you coming and helping us welcome Dr. Christiane, who has changed lives all over the world and made a difference to so many women. Most importantly, she has shown us that we are powerful and that we are responsible for creating our good health and whatever we want for ourselves in our life. Many of you already have made changes that have made such a difference, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you. And in doing that, you are showing the beautiful women and men that it is possible. It is possible. And so you're changing that, which is what you asked at the end of the book in Goddesses Never Change. Really, we're so grateful to you for that. Lots of messages coming in. Thank you. Terrific talk. I've just downloaded Making Life Easy. Can't wait to read it. Anne said, thank you so much. Can I just say also that Dr. Christiane has an online program on dodging energy vampires. It's something that you can sign up to and do that course, and there's an awful lot in that. Also, you have a wonderful kind of monthly program as well that people can sign up to. You have
a Substack. It's called True North.
Yes.
And so I have that Substack, and we have the Menopause Moment. We've got the Detox Mondays. I just am on there regularly. It's my most, like the absolute current stuff that's right now. So that's True North at substack.com. So
go for that, because there's so much. I check in every day with your daily health message. Only a couple of seconds, but it is wonderful. It's part of, Ruth, when you asked about that, what can we do for ourselves? Keeping that kind of influence in our lives helps keep the vibration level up. Thank you everybody for being there. I'm really looking forward to, if you draw 3 cards, all of us will think of a number 1, 2, or 3.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
All right. Okay, they're very interesting. So whatever you're thinking about, here's number 1. This is the Mother Peace Tarot. It's a 1970s feminist deck. It's the only one that I know how to read. Okay. But what this represents is it's time to move on. There are other fish in the sea, and that's probably true for all of us, given where Pluto is. So there may be a little depression, but it's time to move on. So that's number 1. Number 2 is full on. This is the Wheel of Fortune. And there's going to be some twist of fate that brings something surprising and wonderful. This is sort of Uranian. Then number 3 is the 5 of discs, but it's reversed. So what that means is that there was probably some tension around work or money, but because it's reversed, that's leaving. So that's what we've got.
We've all had, oh gosh, every one of us have something good out of all of that. Beautiful. Oh, thank you so much. And final question before you go, because it has been asked, Mercedes has asked, are you coming to Dublin or anywhere in Ireland?
You bet I am. It is the only country that I'm really interested in coming to. Absolutely. So yes, I am.
Well, it'll pack to the rafters, Christiane. It really will.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've heard, by the way, Mario Martinez, the Mind Body Code, Dublin is his favorite city on the planet.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, so you introduced him in Goddesses Never Age as well, and he has a wonderful YouTube channel if anybody wants to. It's so full of fabulous knowledge. I love everything that you're telling us. We want more. We're looking forward to your next book. Cannot wait for you to come to Dublin. It's been such an enormous pleasure. I mean, I know I've been a real fangirl this evening, but I cannot believe, this is manifesting. Dr. Christiane has been in the car with me when I'm going on drives. She's on my walk when I'm going out in the morning, and here she is right in front of me today. I have manifested her. I thank you so much and wish you so much luck and love. Best of luck and keep tangoing. Thank you so much for being here.
All right, great. Thank you all.
Lots and lots of love. Bye-bye. And
Bye,
bye-bye,
guys.
everyone. Thank you so much for being there this evening. I
Bye,
really
everyone.
appreciate that.